Hi there. I am Seth Fineberg. I'm from Accountants Forward, consultancy and content marketing and PR business that I started after years in the profession. I genuinely want to see the profession move forward. And one of the ways we do that is by, through really meaningful content and having great conversations like the one I'm about to have with the one and only Randy Johnston. Randy, just briefly introduce yourself and we're going to get into it.
Well, Seth, good day and welcome to all the listeners as well. So I am Randy Johnston out of Hutchinson, Kansas. Have worked in the accounting profession for decades, starting in the 80s, actually 72 for first time I was working in a CPA firm. And I founded Network Management Group, Inc., which supports CPA firms 24/7 from Boston to Honolulu. And we do a lot of consulting in that organization. But most of the listeners, Seth, probably know me from our K2 business, where we produce about 1,600 CPE events a year to about 100,000 CPAs in the US and Canada. So we've taught continuing professional education or professional development in Canada for 38 years this year, as a matter of fact. So it has been a pleasure through the years to deal with so many software publishers and help develop so many of the technologies that are used by accountants in both public practice and in industry.
Excellent. So we're going to get into it here on behalf of Ace Cloud Hosting. This is one of the many issues that, Ace sort of wants to be associated with and help to address, I think, from a thought leadership point of view and a practical point of view. There's a lot of things that Ace, sort of does sort of directly, but, this isn't really, directly about that. But really the issue, one of the things that they tend to address in their line of business is, the issue of QBO, as we know, and QuickBooks Enterprise Desktop. Now, as firms and businesses really start to, kind of grow and transition, they start realizing maybe certain things, either don't exist in it or, they're just having other needs. So, let's kind of dive into, some of the things that, maybe some of the red flags or the light bulbs that need to go off when you're starting to begin to make these decisions as a business. And, obviously, having the accounting firms alongside them, they're involved in those decisions as well, hopefully.
Yeah, so Seth, just a point of disclosure for the listeners, I've had the good fortune through the years of helping with both QuickBooks Desktop evolution and the creation of QuickBooks Online. So I know the platforms pretty well, and, probably tipping points that are occurring right now was first the discontinuance of the sales of the QuickBooks Desktop Pro and Premier lines and really only, selling Enterprise at this point. Pretty radical price increases in the desktop products and the convenience of the collaboration of the QuickBooks Online product. So there's some twist with QuickBooks Online that we need to talk about as far as security goes.
Absolutely.
And really, you correctly called out that part of the reason some businesses have not transitioned from QuickBooks Desktop to QuickBooks Online is the lack of costing and inventory features that are sophisticated enough. It really evolved to the whole third-party add-on marketplace,
right.
A big deal. And let's face it, a lot of the hosting companies, Ace Cloud included, really came into existence because of the need for collaboration and the ability to host QuickBooks Desktop. So when we first designed the desktop hosting licensing, I did that for paid engagement, add into it. So I'm actually the guy that came up with that program externally as a consultant. And that really led to all of these hosting companies, not only hosting QuickBooks, but a lot of the other legacy platforms.
Yeah, I mean, look, we've been speaking for years about, and I've seen multiple articles written about just the general, like, when do you know it's time to, transition to, just basically upgrade yourself. These days, QBO seems to be, the standard, for, businesses who, need to have, their books done. It's their standard bookkeeping, platform to use. And, QuickBooks Enterprise Desktop does represent a lot of those, sort of necessary, features. But, really, you brought up some of the security, issues. What are a few that I think businesses, accountants, clients, what do they need to be aware of? What are some flags that kind of can pop up?
Yeah, I think the big tipping point right now, Seth, is with QuickBooks Online, there currently is not an opt-out for the AI agents that Intuit is using. So that means all of the business data, or from a public practice perspective, all of the client's data in QBO and payroll are being ingested into its AI model. So you just don't have a way to opt out. Now, Intuit has innovated in June of 25 with some new agents. They released even more in July. So they really created 4 generative AI agents, which are quite nice. They're handling payments and accounting and finance and customer support with those agents. That's a good thing. So, this is one of those situations where end consumers appreciate some of the capabilities delivered by the AI, but they are trading a lot of confidential data for the benefits.
And what, how would a business, or how would, accountants working with these businesses, how would they sort of, go to kind of, from advisory point of view? I mean, that seems to be where a lot of things are heading to. I know that accounting firms definitely want to lean in more from not only a product selection point of view, but, advising on, maybe when it's time to start considering these things.
Yeah,
that you just mentioned.
Yeah, it turns out that if in fact the clients are still legacy QuickBooks Desktop with the needs for costing and inventory, they've got a couple of paths forward. One that Intuit would like the businesses to use is Intuit Enterprise, but at the current pricing level of that platform, there are many competitors that are in the marketplace now that may make more sense. And those might need new generation SaaS products. And I'll just name a few that I frequently would recommend: the Soft Ledgers of the world, the X Ledgers of the world, the Zoho Books of the world, plus the new AI products like Basis or Digits AI or Dual Entry or Puzzle. There's a significant number of new CAS competitors that don't have this same security issue, plus, more importantly, actually do offer the costing and inventory features. Well, if you're offering client accounting services and your client needs that level of transaction accounting, better to be inside a single system than adding, a third-party product to get that done, a Sin 7 or whatever might be your add-on in that particular case. Now, when it's advisory, Seth, I have a weird view of advisory on this. I always think about advisory as being client-centric. So it's always what's in the best interest of the client personally and in the best interest of their business. And when you start doing advisory work, there's only a relatively few tools that can do advisory, but many of those advisory tools that are automated are hooked to the QBO platform, or the competitors, sometimes hooked to Xero, sometimes hooked to Zoho, and a few of the others.
Right. Well, this is all very essential stuff when you're considering just the idea of choosing between QBO and Enterprise Desktop. When a business is actually ready to make that transition, what are some of the top things that you would say that they need to do, to get in place from an organizational point of view, data point of view, what have you, security point of view? What are some of the top things they need to do to get ready?
Yeah,
or is it become a lot more seamless these days?
Well, it probably is more seamless than it has been, but the security setup, Seth, is still pretty radical on this. Part of the issue now is that as you transition to these SaaS accounting products, you still have all of your platform for productivity that you need. whether that's Microsoft 365 or whether it is Google Workspace or whether it's the Zoho One productivity platform, and just think about your own experience in terms of trying to get your productivity software set up right. Most accountants and most industry businesses or entrepreneurs, they don't have the background in the security setup, and unfortunately, many of the IT providers also don't understand proper setup. And if we want to use the old way of talking about it, you don't have a firm foundation. And beyond the foundation of the productivity software, then you want to make it easy to get into these other platforms. Single sign-on, for example, passing your credentials once you log in once to all of your accounting software or all your supporting software. So there's some mechanics today that security conscious providers, sometimes they refer to them as themselves as MSSP, managed security providers along the way.
Managed services, yeah.
Yeah, and so you got an MSP or an MSSP, and so the vendors that have been doing hosting are often trying to do those services. But back to your real core question on the data cleanup, a good number of the new generation systems do not have an easy way to convert legacy files that have costing and inventory data. So unfortunately,
that's key.
It really is key. It means you're probably going to wind up with a new chart of accounts set up. You're going to have a new structure. You're not going to be able to do comparative reporting for a while. And that's where an accountant involved can actually help you structure the new setup correctly to get the management information that you need. Only upon rare occasion do I see situations where you can bring legacy data forward and actually, from a small business perspective, and actually be able to use it usefully for management reporting.
So once again, a real major case for consideration of an MSP. I'm going to kind of take it back just a little bit back to the products, themselves. I would love to know, just from a practical point of view, when it might actually make sense to go, maybe QBO is kind of the right way to just kind of stay, especially, now all things considered. And conversely, Randy, when might it be time? What are some of the top things to say, yeah, it might actually be time to move? We also, you just went into, what to consider when you do make that move, but so that's why I said we're going to kind of go back a little bit and say, what might make sense for you to stay with QBO in terms of its, feature set and what it has, and then what might make sense, conversely to go, yeah, maybe it is time to make that move.
Well, QBO is a wonderful platform, and if your needs are simple, great. Remember, they're the 800-pound gorilla in the U.S. market, and they're fairly dominant in several other markets as well. Right. So if you only really need straightforward general ledger accounting and accounts payable processing, you're going to have a leg up using Intuit systems. Now that they've integrated payables, that is also helpful. The payroll systems that they have being integrated is helpful. So you can have a straightforward solution with, the offerings from Intuit alone. Are too many add-on products. You start
such as let's talk about that a little bit.
Such as, let's just say Bill.com, which I like that platform, or Bill, which I like for accounts payable approval. But in effect, you take QuickBooks and you also have to add Bill to get the workflows for approval, or for AR management. Or, if we just think about manufacturing inventory, you might add a MySys or one of a collection of many other products. Pretty much, Seth, as I see it today, in
Fishbowl's another
Fishbowl would be another great example. In almost every category, there's 6-7 competitors that are trying to get, let's say, the distribution piece, or they're trying to, solve some specific problem. Well, if you start having a whole bunch of different add-ons, and you look at your subscription total costs, number one, the complexities, number two, and then often number three, workarounds that are in spreadsheets. If you find that you've got all of a sudden a whole bunch of different balls up in the air,
right, you're starting to have to put things in,
you're tracking things in lots of places. Now it's probably time to move on to alternate systems. And, in the old days, I used to use, and still do actually, a 5-tier model of accounting software. And I consider this new generation to almost real-time information, dashboards, and other advisory guidance. And you can't afford to buy, maintain, build, whatever, if you're an entrepreneur. You can go back and focus on running the business.
When you have to make necessary transitions as you grow that business, as an entrepreneur, you get to a point of where you're either good where you are, or you see sort of bigger things. Maybe you bought another company, or your business has matured to where you would maybe need something like a QuickBooks Enterprise or something like this. And again, you're so used to sort of that certain level of automation, but you mentioned also some of the security and transition needs that an MSP would provide. It almost makes sense to kind of have that at your disposal as well, because that's just not something. Look, one thing we talked about years ago about cloud, like one of the things that I thought that it kind of took away or transitioned was the traditional IT department. You don't necessarily need people sort of physically there monitoring your servers and things like that anymore. It's just not all that efficient for some businesses. They would much rather just go, look, someone else can take care of that. There's plenty of services out there.
Yeah, but notice, even on that comment though, Seth, notice cloud doesn't necessarily mean less expensive, but it means that you're not, and it's not necessarily faster, but you're not responsible for it, and you can focus on the core.
Yeah. That was kind of what I wanted to circle around with that whole, idea of just being comfortable with, all right, look, there's somebody that takes care of this. I got to run my business. I got to take care of my employees. I want to take care of all of the things that make this business what it is. IT, security, back office, functions, compliance. That's not what I'm not an expert in it. Mm-hmm. It's much better to have it in knowledgeable and secure hands.
Exactly. Key is with something like QuickBooks Desktop or QuickBooks Enterprise, you either have to have the hosting expertise internally, or you have to outsource it to a cloud provider. On the other hand, if it's a SaaS platform like QBO, you really can subscribe and start running off of it. Now, notice in both cases, you may not set it up right if you don't have accounting background, but you can get started, and that's actually was the legacy of the QuickBooks Desktop products. Is you just kind of did it yourself, even if you did it wrong.
Yep.
You had control.
You went to your Staples, you went to your Office Max, you put it, you installed it.
Yep, and off you went. And so
off you went.
So, the other thing that, I'll just look back a little bit with you on this one, is the pandemic kicked in was a lot of the e-commerce. If you think about how much that forced businesses to be internet ready, if you would, and now it's the expectation that you have online presences as well as, bricks and mortar type of presence in many of the businesses. But the fact of the matter is, the mobility first type of approach, the, tablet, smartphone environment, the browser environment, that's kind of expected from a customer experience at this point. And so if you're doing things the same old way, you probably don't look as good as the competitors who have modern.
Yeah, there's definitely that, and just the mentality these days too of on cost. I mean, obviously you want to as a business owner or someone looking out for the finances, you do want to have some controls over spending, but what you're spending on and what it's doing for you, you're used to. Maybe in some cases you are going to pay for what you get. We see it all over the place with our whole subscription mentality of, when you subscribe to something or you pay maybe even a bit of a premium, what you're getting back matters most.
It does. And, I'm just reflecting on the old cash is king phrase. But if you think about most businesses, we're getting money in, so it's the AR side, and we watch that. We're putting money out, typically in payables or payroll, so we watch our spends, the cash in and out. But there is also, a need to watch some of the recurring expense, because one of the things that is a common business mistake is getting comfortable with a particular spend level that's unnecessary. And if we think about, we'll take it personally first, how many subscription services you have, and then do that with a business. And if you authorize, and let's just say $10, that was the old cap. If you allow users to have as many $10 subscriptions as they want, they might have 8 or 10 or 20, and all of a sudden you got real money tied up in all those little subscriptions, which don't necessarily work together and don't necessarily help the business in the same way. I'm amazed how many times when I analyze even small businesses that we uncover subscriptions to products that 4 or 5 people have, and they've built their own system outside the system in these subscription products.
Randy, this has definitely been enlightening for me. There's a lot of things that we could really dive into on security and data management and all of that. Perhaps another time. Final thoughts though on this issue of choosing between QBO and QB Desktop. Anything we might have maybe glossed over.
And Seth, you probably got the understatement. There's so many more things that we could talk about.
Many.
Now, realistically, for most of the listeners, my hope is that they are dealing with an accountant who is well informed on client accounting services or advisory services, and that they have a discussion around this. I despise, Seth, ready, shoot, aim. I can't tell you how many times I've seen systems selected without due diligence. And the lack of due diligence right now is probably greater than ever before. And then that last final thought on this QBO versus QBD. Intuit is the tried and true 800-pound gorilla. A lot of the new products that look good, that I'm very impressed with, it's going to be interesting to see if they actually have staying power. So you have a risk on some of the new highly innovative technology. And again, you didn't hear me say avoid the innovative technology. I just said be very cautious of your risk and have a backup plan just in case that's needed. So you can often have providers, accounting firms, or hosting companies like Ace Cloud really be watching your back and be a sounding board so you don't make a decision in a bubble.
Don't go into it alone or feeling like you are alone. Partnering at this stage of the game is key with your accounting firm, with your service providers. Definitely lean into them for questions and answers. Randy, it is always a pleasure, my friend, to talk to you about any of this stuff. I love that that we've spoken about the future, going back to our beginnings. And the future is now. We're in it, my friend. We're talking about it, and we're seeing about where things are going. They're moving faster than ever. Just remember again, you're not in it alone.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, your advice of partnering with somebody is quite good. And remember, are we in that future right now? But we can create a new future if we do it thoughtfully.
I'm excited about where things are going, as much as on a knife edge that things might seem. I'm pretty excited about where things could potentially go and the amount of control we actually do have from a business and technology point of view. Randy Johnston, thank you so much for your time, and also thank you to our hosts, Ace Cloud. Definitely get in touch with them, for any of these kind of managed service level questions that you might have.
So Seth, thank you, and I appreciate spending time with you and the listeners today. Good day.
Always.